This week we've got Carlotta joining with us. Super lucky to have Carlotta speaking with us. She's a former CPO at giffgaff. She's now a product coach and I guess product consultant. You're helping companies and individuals be better product people. Carlotta's going to talk to us about her experience at giffgaff and how they really embraced product-led principles. But that's probably enough from me. I will hand over to Carlotta. She's going to talk for, I think, 30 minutes-ish, and then we'll have some questions at the end.
Thank you. Thank you, Ed. So let's get straight into the topic because I think there's enough of me throughout the whole presentation and nothing that you really need to know about me right now. What we're going, I'd love to talk to you about this, and I was so excited when Ed asked me to have run through it once again with you. Is that this has been absolutely the bulk of my experience at giffgaff. I was there for CPO. I left about a year and a half ago because, as Ed said, I wanted to prove myself on as a consultant, as an advisor, and have more variety and flexibility probably in my life. But it has been an incredible journey that the team is bringing forward, and they are keep building incredible products that I hope you as potential members might be experiencing very soon. But I'll tell you in a nutshell why we wanted to build a world-class product organization, what it meant to us, what we did well, and what actually really we didn't get right. I'll be very authentic and honest, and I'm very happy to take any questions that might feel even a bit controversial, uncomfortable to you. I'm sure I've been through it, and I had to get my head around it for a long time. So I think the benefit is for you to really ask me whatever you potentially are struggling with and what you might be wanting to really hear from me. Very unfiltered. Conversation, obviously in the respect and confidentiality, of an organization that I'm not part of with anymore officially, even though I retain really strong ties with them and with majority of the leadership team that they right now. So starting from the very beginning, why we wanted to move forward and build a world-class product organization at giffgaff. So there were three main levers that we kept coming back to. And one was the market conditions. So you might know that the telecommunication market is pretty saturated, is highly competitive, the margins are shrinking. And we knew that as a team, as a leadership team, we had to keep staying on top of our game, still generating more revenue, keep growing, delivering real value for our members, which is the way giffgaff calls their own customers. And so you might have heard of giffgaff Broadband more recently that has been launched officially. And that, for example, was one of the things that we were trying to do at the time. How do we launch, for example, broadband and other products in the best possible way so that we generate incremental revenue? But a big driver as well was operational efficiency. So you might know that giffgaff was built without a customer care. Because there is still a community that helps the members, and members help each other, and that kept our OpEx line really, really flat. giffgaff has always been a very agile, nimble company, and we knew that to be able to keep growing, but by keeping our operational efficiency, we had to be really productive and creative with our product teams. We needed to get the best value out of the teams. And then there was also an emerging theme around people. And I mentioned this quite candidly because I'm sure you might be seeing the same in your organization. At some point, we started perceiving a bit of a fraction between product and tech, the rest of the company. maybe marketing. Giffgaff was born with a strong brand. If you remember, potentially the first ads, they were quite quirky. They were particularly interesting and funny and well positioned within the industry, and we were doing things really, really differently. But at some point, I think there were kind of two souls in the organization that were quite not able to communicate in the most effective way. So we wanted to address that piece as well because we were concerned that that would what wouldn't propel us forward in the growth that we wanted to reach. And so I put this slide in because I thought, let me spell out exactly what we meant, because sometimes we just assume what that means. Um, and we had a lot of debate as well about what being a product-centric organization really meant. And we went by kind of the Kagan definition, and we decided that we wanted to ground ourselves into a bit, in a bit methodology and into a framework that already existed, as opposed to building our own version so that everyone could read stuff out and could recognize themselves, like a salesperson, a finance person could just research and, do the cognitive load of thinking, oh, I get now maybe what that means to you. It's not just Carlotta as a CPO that wants us to do this and that. And I'm stressing this because I don't know, it was a consideration we made. Like for a long time, we were wondering what that really meant to us. And also, I was chatting with Ed just before this talk, and we banned a few words in the organization. The first word to ban was the T word, we used to call it transformation, under the assumption that majority of transformations do fail and people feel that they are done to them as opposed to being part of one of those. And in many organizations, sometimes there is a transformation manager, a change manager, and that was not the approach that we wanted to take. We wanted the whole company being on board. That meant actually that probably some things took us a longer time than expected, and I'll tell you all about it. But we didn't want to use that transformation piece. And another thing that we tried to steer away from was really calling out a product-led organization or a product-centric organization, because again, sounded that everything was about the product and was easily misunderstood. So obviously, as a CPO and a product person, I was living and breathing those principles, but I always try to make the effort of translating those into what that actually meant for everyone. I'm not saying I was always great and good at doing it, but I prefer to call it out because it was a conscious effort that we all made as a leadership team. So, what we meant by, building, world-class product organization, we wanted to build products that were really answering users' needs. And we're not just to tick the box like typical telco style. Oh, I've got a great business case. It's going to make us billions. And then it does nothing. No reference intended. We wanted obviously to use the new products generated as a marketing tool. And giffgaff has always grown massively via referrals. And we felt that, that principle of creating an amazing product that people talk about was absolutely at the essence of our company, our operating model, and very much part of the principles and the success criteria that we wanted to set for ourselves. We wanted to see analytics flowing free between all the teams, and this was a big struggle, and I'll tell you a bit more about it later. And obviously, we believed in building by iterations, experimenting, and finally, essentially, and this is also something that triggered, as you can imagine, majority of emotions and maybe some resistance is that we want, well, or I imagine all the business functions being aligned around the success of the product. So I didn't want people to feel part of their own department, marketing, sales, finance. But what I really wanted to create and inspiring to people is that they were feeling they were contributing to the launch of giffgaff broadband, of contracts or phones, whatever products they were working for, no matter the department they were coming from. And this was one of my biggest dreams and probably one of the most difficult ones to achieve. So to give you a bit of a more understanding of where we were and where we wanted to go to, giffgaff had been super successful in the market in terms of growth. I think in creating really committed, engaged, loyal members. And as I said, the marketing was a big factor into it. And I think the role of finance was also crucial, had been crucial up to that point because our P&L was very lean in so many ways. So we were coming from an approach, an operating model where marketing, sales, and finance were pretty strong voices in the company. But at the same time, there were a few things that were not working. We had very aggregate business goals. We were talking about revenue and profit, like typical kind of big CEO levers, but we were not so good at cascading down what that was meaning for every person in the company. And that led to a collective sense of ownership, which is great in a way culturally that everyone really cares. But when things don't necessarily go as intended, it's really hard then to unpack it and to understand what we could have done differently. And I think at some point that was preventing us from getting better and better and better. So what we wanted to do by embracing a product-centric operating model was we wanted to do three key things that would help us across the whole organization. We wanted to have a high degree of measurability, essentially breaking down all the business outcomes into very, very product-specific deliverables, measuring, testing, and knowing where things were working, where they were not working, which we couldn't up to that point. We wanted to build truly cross-functional teams, which I think sounds relatively easy. And then I will tell you why we found it not that easy in real essence. But we obviously wanted to make sure that the teams were created in a way so there was a strong representation of obviously engineering, product, UX, but also product marketing. We started discussing the role of product marketing at that point, and we never had the product marketing function, for example, or analysts embedded in the team. For example, the data analysis department was separate, and maybe in some of the companies that they work for as well, they tend to do a lot of reporting for senior levels as opposed to serving, the product teams. And we were at that point where we wanted to unlock that power, really. And we wanted to really create clear accountabilities, being really clear, not conflating the role of a product manager, of a business owner, a product person. And that took us a long time to unpack because, again, as you can imagine, it's so easy to conflate the value of the role with the value of the person, and that becomes usually a quite defensive conversation and not a very straightforward one when you start addressing the accountability piece. In any case, so after the senior leadership team got on board with it, and every time I talk about this, it sounds like it was a talk or a series of talk, and instead it was a very long time, months, probably was maybe a year and a half. Like it was a long time. It took me, if I look back, all I was doing at the very beginning as my assignment as a CPO was talking to everyone in the board and trying to convince them that that was absolutely a good idea. And it took me a long time, to be perfectly candid. But when we got the senior leadership team on board, then finally, and I'll never forget that day when we got the go ahead to start running a more specific trial, a very hands-on trial on a test and a trial on what that was meaning to become, embracing these product principles. So what did we do? When I say we, it was, I would say, largely the leadership team, even though lately I will tell you maybe a bit more about those dynamics. But I care really to say that there was a true alliance between myself as a CPO and the CTO. And I'm mentioning this because I don't know whether it happens in all the companies. Obviously, there was a healthy tension between our two roles. Like, obviously, me still pushing for features, and the CTO still pushing for quality of the code, the integrity of the code, etc. But at least we had the same vision. We knew that we wanted the same thing for the company. And that is, for example, one thing that, or an area where I might suggest you to look at in case you are in that position where you would like to do more and potentially creating an alliance with the engineering team is something that definitely worked for us as a team and for me personally in that role. So we got the go ahead to build a superstar cross-functional team. We curated the team, we selected the best talent, we put them together, super excited, off we go. And we also had the moment where we had to decide where to direct this superstar cross-functional team. What do we ask them to solve? Um, and obviously we considered putting them on an area of the business with some level of impact but low risk. And in the end, we reconsidered that. And we decided that we wanted to put them on the most risky product we had at the time because we wanted to really create accountability, sense of ownership, and we wanted to have skin in the game so that could really work, so that everyone would have the impetus and the energy behind to really make it work. So we picked mobile contracts. And giffgaff contracts have been out for a few years now, but at the time, the year in which we ran this trial, they were new, they hadn't been launched yet, and they were actually the product that was making the difference between growing or staying flat. And if we hadn't been able to launch them at the right time, we would have completely missed the target, just to like, the overall company target in terms of activations and revenue. So just to give you an idea of how crucial it was to get contracts right. So before a big launch, or just a few months ahead of big launch, we decided also to use that product to forge new ways of working. We thought, okay, we're so scared about this that it must be the right thing because it's either make it or break it, and it's gonna work because we have thought about it. We thought about everything. We're so clear this is gonna work. We have a clear vision. We've done all the groundwork. It's gonna work. Obviously, guess what? In the typical manual of the product manager, when you're so sure you've done all your research, you're so sure that that feature will make such a big difference, it doesn't. And the trial didn't work or didn't work to the extent we wanted to, but at least gave us some reflection points, and clearly we got tons of feedback. So we learned a lot, and hopefully this is helpful for you too to just be playing it back honestly. I think could help you think it through as well. So we were so focused, and we were so excited to build that cross-functional team that we didn't think through clearly the relationship of that team with the rest of the organization, or at least not well enough. And we noticed, and probably would have been very hard to anticipate this, but that there were key influencers outside of the team in the company that weren't completely on board, and people could perceive their own doubt about it. And I think that was casting a bit of a shadow on the overall ability of the product team to really do their job really well. In terms of talent, I really needed the product management team to step up really quickly, to own a P&L very well, and they were absolutely ready. But I think then doing it so suddenly and without maybe enough support and with a lot of pressure is something that they found really, really hard. Again, it's something that I probably have underestimated the most as a CPO, how much support actually people need throughout any change. Data is something, so we, for example, embedded a data analyst, but again, we realized that it's not enough to have a person over there that will feed data. They because they just fall back to different, traditional ways of doing things, and they just do it in a way that is not perfect. They would feed data, but they wouldn't, for example, analyze it in the right way so that it's ready for product teams. And product teams were not also very accustomed to ask for the data they needed in the right way, and so that felt very clunky as a relationship. And last but not least, again, in a very unfiltered way, we had to, um, just surrender to the fact that the CPO and the CTO were two strong voices on wanting that vision, seeing that vision, pushing for it. Um, and it, and we hadn't managed yet to cascade it down deeply in the organization, meaning that, if you took the two of us away, then everything would have fallen apart. And so we were under pressure at that point to make sure that the ways of working were taken on by someone else and not just by the two of us who couldn't be in the details all the time. So the CTO and I went kind of back to the drawing board thinking, we know this is right. We know we can make it work. How do we try again? Um, we went to the drawing board and we thought, okay, so let's go back to the regional brief, which wasn't actually how do you transform the company or how do you make sure that the company works by the book with product-led principles. And we thought about it again, in a slightly different way, which was we need to build the strongest product organization we can build, not for our own sake, but for everyone's sake, and primarily also for the benefit of our members. And yes, we love P&L accountability, data, UX, and testing, experimenting. Fair enough. But what does it take then to get to that point? And so we had an even more honest conversation around, well, what we need to change are really, we need to relook at processes, operations. We need to look at how we are feeding data, how we are reporting, all the tools for the dev team, the tech stack. We still had a level of legacy that we knew was, making us lag behind slightly on moving forward with this vision, and we had to take a good look at talent density, commerciality of the product teams. And we knew that at that point that we had to do it with inspiration and engagement rather than, jumping on wanting to do stuff and executing stuff and just applying those principles. So big learning. And so I'll tell you fast forward what instead worked for us. And the first one that if I'm really honest, I refused to accept for a very long time was that we really needed the sponsorship of our CEO, which was actually obviously behind it, was supportive of the whole shift towards a product operating model. But that was kind of happening closed doors. And so it was when we decided actually to make that really evident public. We relooked at the whole comms coming from the leadership team, all the events were at that point focused on the product organization of the future so that the people could find their own place in it. And it wasn't coming anymore just from the CPO, but was actually coming from the whole board, including the CEO, that was taking a strong stance on it as this is where we're going as a company. And there will be another, I'll tell you in a second why this was so key. Another thing, and this I could talk to you about company OKRs and our journey for another 10 sessions. But in a nutshell, we started using OKRs, and actually our journey on OKRs has started a few years before. But we used the framework of OKRs really to our own benefit. We boil it down to 4 objectives as a company, literally 4, and one of which at the time was, for example, launching broadband. So very concrete stuff that we wanted to do as a company. And then we started cascading down those 4 objectives into product objectives, and we tried to make it as concrete as possible. Why this was so key, and maybe it's not key in all the new, startups or startups that start right now, but for us, we actually were starting from literally marketing objectives, finance objectives, product objectives, and we were so fragmented that this was a huge undertaking, first of all, but second, it was also super successful because product, marketing, sales, finance, engineering, everyone had 4 objectives, and those 4 objectives were the same for the whole company. So this was a game changer for us. And you might remember that I told you about, my role as a CPO, the role of a CTO, and that there were some influencers in the company. We realized that actually we just had to engage those people and to make them the evangelist of this shift towards becoming a product organization of the future. We basically created essentially a squad of these senior people. They were really acting as the glue between the senior leadership team and the product teams. And we engaged them. We spent a lot of time together. We gave them strategic guidance, and we gave them the mandate to take this forward as they envisioned it, as they felt it was right, and they had a lot of autonomy in executing and delivering against it. And also product talent. And I'm mentioning these and I'm stressing this because, again, something I haven't read actually in any book, something that has happened for us at giffgaff. The moment we started to talk about this with a lot more passion, vision, futuristic, like people started to feel really excited about it and started to worry a bit less about themselves in protecting potentially their own role. And we started seeing people were raising hands and say, well, I want to be part of this. I want to move to product. How can I do that? And that's how we started to build real talent by acquiring people from other teams, like really, really talented leaders that wanted really passionately to contribute towards it. Maybe less skilled from hardcore product management skills, but great influencers, great communicators, great leaders, and people that really wanted to move forward with this. Obviously, this also saved us quite a lot of money because it was a way for us to shift budget between one department and the other very effectively. And finally, something that made a big difference was also the budgeting process. And with no disrespect whatsoever for my colleagues from finance, but you know how the budgeting process happens. Like there's a lot of assumptions on a spreadsheet, and most of the time, those assumptions actually never see the light, or they don't see the light in the way that they're put in a spreadsheet. And so what we did, we had to fight for this, but we succeeded. And thanks to the sponsorship of the CEO as well, when we were going through this change, we decided to submit a budget according to which we knew that we could achieve kind of 80% of those targets, but we were not entirely sure, and there wasn't 20% of which was underpinned. And we still decided to go ahead submitting a bigger number, calling out specifically to the shareholders and the investors that that 20% was underpinned, meaning that the product teams had really had to find a way throughout the year to cover that 20% of budget that we committed to. And as you can imagine, this is not something that you can go ahead with without the sponsorship of a CEO that takes that responsibility on themselves. And again, this made a huge difference because it made the product teams a lot more accountable for the P&L. And they really gave us a really strong signal also within the organization that they were owning the P&L. Last slide and that because they're probably also bored of my voice. But what did I learn out of all of this? That actually is a journey of a few years, so not short. Change, I think, at least unless maybe works in other companies differently, but for me, what I really experienced firsthand is change must be driven from the top. So you can get a bit further by yourself as a product person, but it needs to come from the top. You can influence more senior people, but you need to have their sponsorship and endorsement to really make it work. It's a profound, profound company and cultural change if you really want to make it happen, and especially if you set a really high bar and you want to tell yourself in your own heart and not on your CV that you've done it. It means that you have engaged the whole company across all the departments, um, and I think the support you give to them is kind of never enough. There's so much help and support that they need to be able to go through the change. Talent, in my opinion, really makes it or break it. So you could find different ways to upskill your team. Maybe moving people around, identifying key people that can help you. But talent is essential. So if you don't have talent in key roles in product, in engineering, in UX, I think it's barely impossible to move towards this model. And data governance processes, things that maybe as a PM we find a bit less fun, they are essential. They have to be rebuilt completely with a strong focus. We rebuilt completely the governance, how we were doing steering meetings, board meetings, company meetings, a bit pedantic and sorry, not much fun. Uh, Essential though, essential, and again, sends such a strong signal. Um, and trials, as again, by the book of the great product manager, they're so essential. Be open to the fact that might disprove your assumption. Definitely, didn't have some, I had some sleepless nights when the trial didn't go as intended, or at least as I wanted it. But I think your resilience in overcoming, those shortcomings and keep trying and keep learning and getting better at it is what makes the biggest difference in moving forward with a product-centric vision and reapproaching the whole operating model on the basis of product. And I think we're at the end.
Super. Thank you so much, Carlotta. I know I've got some questions, and I'm sure everyone else does as well. I've already seen a couple pop up in the chat. Thank you so much for that. If you do have questions, then do write them in the chat, and I'll do my best to sort of like facilitate them. Just from my end, Carlotta, like you're talking about helping the product team here evolve and become much more product led. Like, can you give us a sense of the scale of the challenge? Like, how big was the organization? How long did this take? And what did the ways of working look like kind of before and after?
Yeah. So more or less, it's a mid-sized company. It's 250, 300 people-ish, half of which are product and tech and UX. And so that was, for example, another big driver for us in terms of thinking about the future of the engagement of product people, engineering team, when you put two and two, it's like, this is so essential. Half of the company is made by essentially product team. So we are already a product company. We just have to behave as one. We just need to improve, I suppose, the craft and call it out for what it is, because our future clearly looks like that. So, for example, my team was a team of 60-ish people between product, UX, content. And like I said, I don't think so numerically we were outnumbering, I think, the rest of the departments. But and I suppose this happens in so many other companies where they have started in a more traditional way, where there is a business case that becomes really successful. You start launching a product which is successful with a great marketing spin, then a lot of the gravitas, the influence was still held by finance and marketing. And again, saying this with no disrespect to my colleagues, we talk so much about it, but I think there was a power dynamic that we had to rebalance within the organization. How long did it take? Well, I did it for about 5 years, so not a short period of time. And from what my colleagues tell me is that they're still working on that vision. So the vision is the same, sorry, more precisely, the vision stayed. So that's what the company is still working on. And they keep applying these principles to more and more products. So for example, if you are members or you have heard about giffgaff, so broadband was launched absolutely under these principles. Roaming offering this summer under the same principles. But I think the real struggle is when there's always a piece of legacy. So it's easier to set things up in the way you intend them and in a product way. The big chunk of conversation still, I'm assuming now, is on the mobile side of things, because it was set up just in a very different way, and because it still represents majority of the P&L. So it feels risky, to change stuff there.
Yeah, super. Thanks very much. We've got a couple of questions in the chat. Why don't I read them out, and so you don't have to go digging for them. So first question from Dipayan, who's asking, a world-class product organization needs to manage its cash cow, optimizing its core offering while simultaneously building for the next wave of growth. What's your advice to protect and empower the exploration teams working on newer, riskier bets from the inevitable pressure to devote resources back to the immediate high certainty wins of the core mobile business?
Yeah, and I think this is exactly what I was referring to now, which was much easier to do it when you launch broadband and roaming and there's no legacy, much harder when, majority of your P&L is driven by mobile, and it was working in a completely different way. Where also, quite frankly, a lot of the tweaks are kind of commercial tweaks that you can make. So either you're a very, very commercially sound product manager, or it's quite easy for a finance person to come in and say, oh, I would do this, I would do that. And it's much harder to protect that. But then your next question is about what do you advise to protect and empower the exploration teams? So yes. We have been through this so many times, I can't tell you. I can tell you what we did. So we went through a few times a resourcing exercise, which we did between CPO and CTO. And actually, one good thing that I could mention again is that before I would used to think about my budget as product budget and the CTO budget as his. While instead, what we started doing was, no, listen, we have a common vision. If you need budget, I will give you budget and we will just work it through. So I think this is a great thing, for example, that I think I could mention as well to substantiate the power of like having an alliance, and in this case was the CTO, where we would, wouldn't ask for more money, but we would just be shifting stuff around in case I needed something, because we agree that, having a stronger UX person or a stronger PM would help both of us and therefore the whole organization. But basically every week we were asked, oh, we don't think this team delivers enough. Why don't we put a couple of engineers over here in mobile so that if we put them on mobile, then they can deliver this bunch of features, and we can make money out of it. Um, I don't know if I have got the answer, but then I think you need to be standing your ground. You need to remind people that, it's not just you move a couple of devs and therefore they write this amount of code and therefore this equates more money. It doesn't work that way. There are so many reasons why it doesn't, because the developers, are people. They know a specific domain. They are used to work in a specific team, and they're not just resources that you can shift around, forgetting that they are, um, human beings. Um, and also, I think maybe in a bit of a cheeky way, but I remember going back and saying, well, we thought, so you think this could be a great business case, and I hear you. But you also thought the same about this other thing. We did it. I followed you that time. It didn't really work. So we will never have the proof that this great business case is actually sure money. And so here we're taking a risk as a team. I tried always to bring people back to the vision we signed up to. I can't say I was very popular at the time or that it wasn't easy, but honestly, I don't see any other way than holding your ground and not being pulled in each and every direction. I always try to be really logical, open, and yet collaborative, trying to support everyone, because in the end the goal is not the you know the product setup is actually being successful as a company and generating growth. But if I wasn't sure about the value of some stuff, I would just call it out, and most of the time I think that was the case.
Yeah,
Did I
super.
answer that question? It's not always easy to unpack all that happened in that.
Yeah. There's a couple of questions here which I feel are quite related. So
Yeah.
Diane again is sort of asking, how do you bring a shared understanding of, sort of true product management to the leadership level, and sort of explain what that looked like to them. And then Sudha is asking sort of what did the training look like for non-technical folks, when you wanted to get them, thinking in a more product-like way.
Yeah, so leadership team, it was a lot of conversations, and I tried so many different ways. I don't know what really could work for you. I think try different things and see what sticks, depending on your personality type, the other people's personality type, the type of company culture. I tried one-to-ones. So, for example, talking, on a one-to-one basis, about what that was looking like and listening to their own concerns, was really powerful for me. It didn't change things in the short term, but for example, being told by the CMO, quite frankly, I love the vision, but I'm not yet sure that we have enough talent or the caliber of people that we might need in the organization, was just very good feedback. Painful because you cannot act upon it overnight. But at least I knew where the concern was, and I thought actually was a also relatively valid concern. But I also did a lot of workshops with the leadership team, in obviously with the sponsorship of the CEO, but trying to work things out together, to understand, just asking 10 million questions like, what do you mean? What concerns you? Why do you think it's not this way? Um, it was a long, long process, but eventually we got there. So I would say I think your best chance of succeeding is listening to everyone's concern, even though you know what you have to do from the first moment. And I think that what makes the process difficult at the personal level, because you know you could be doing tomorrow if they only listen to you. But then it's your job to listen to their own concerns as well.
Yeah, super.
There was a, oh, in product, in terms of product, was that the training of people outside product? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, well, at some point we hired a product coach. It worked. It helped massively. Because as well, again, being really candid and honest, no matter how much I tried not to put attach my name to that vision, I was still carrying the job title of Chief Product Officer. And so product was in my job title. And in a way or the other, I think it was still coming across as I wanted to push for my own agenda. Um, and and in the end, I think having also a product coach that people could go back to and say, well, how did you do this in this company and the other company, and kind of having a bit of an external opinion. I mean, someone that obviously then was absolutely part of the company, but I think that really helped. In terms of training, well, there is Ed now, right? No, but generally, I think the giffgaff still loves absolutely all the things that the hustle budget does. But there are more and less effective trainings, to be really honest. And I don't think many actually cater for the understanding of people outside product. Um, One good thing that I think I did at some point, I forced everyone in the leadership team to read Transformed. They loved it. They understood somehow much better what I meant for a long time, and things started to shift. So sometimes I think, again, maybe finding clever ways to propose external content that comes across as uh, unbiased as much as possible, objective, really helps as well. And keep being generous with feeding um, that content, that inspiration. But equally, I suppose it's also important to try to maybe find resources that would play devil's advocate, right? Like to show how hard it can be um, for the teams around product to adjust to that change. And I think that yeah, that goes a long way in building bridges and trying to understand each other.
Yeah, yeah, super. And one more question here from Felipe, who's lead product ops at ZenChef. And he's wondering, how do you think, prepare for, and structure your organization for the future? So speaking in terms of the product and team growth, but also the evolution of product-led growth in the company.
I'm not sure I fully understand. So how did I structure the company? Um,
So my reading of this question is he's thinking
mm,
about um, how do you plot out the kind of like just number of people you'll have, the
mm,
structure of the teams, that kind of like that future org chart, and then
yeah.
how do you kind of like move from one to the next?
Okay. Okay. Thanks. Um, I'll answer Filippo, but if you want more clarification, then jump in. So we had the big constraint, which was budget. So we knew, we had, I can't remember exactly the number, let's say 250 people. The product organization with the future needed to have 250 people. So that is a big constraint in the end. And so what we really did, well, we were lucky that we had a bunch of vacancies at the time. So changing the job title between dev and product manager or UX didn't have really an impact on people. So we started from there, playing around literally with the numbers. And then we engaged the head of engineering or the heads of engineering and the product directors. Basically, put ourselves for hours and hours, if not days, in front of a big spreadsheet, thinking, okay, maybe how do we resource the Gifka product broadband team? How do we resource this team? We tried. And we noticed that, first draft, you need still 100% more budget and people. Okay, second cut, 80%. And then it got to a point where, okay, this feels a bit stretchy and a bit uncomfortable, but we are kind of three, we could really do more with three people or something like that. And then the conversation began, oh, maybe we have three vacancies in marketing, in sales. Can we do that? And we kind of try to do as much as possible between product and tech to try to avoid to piss everyone else off. And then we started thinking as well, oh, what if we shift? Maybe we propose to this person to come over here, and maybe that would be a really good product person. And we just spend a lot of time trialing this out first from, yeah, this is what we would love, and then going backwards slowly, a bit painfully. I was like, oh, I don't really want to compromise in this. I really have to. And I think that strong reality check really worked, because then we went forward with a proposal of, you know, OpEx line stays flat. We're just rejigging a few things. We think it can work, and off we go. We went ahead with it. Now, obviously, I would also say though that we felt the need of reassessing it every year, and we had a bit of a tendency every year of kind of redoing it, that I think was maybe our weakness in a way. Maybe we should have given it a longer life potentially to make it really succeed. Maybe that's a reflection point that comes to my mind now.
Super. Thanks very much. Oh, I think we do have one more question. I think this will probably be the last question we'll take, just given an eye on the time, from Lily, who says, I noticed a common trap for companies in similar situations is that they know that their old ways are not working anymore. They want to change fast, but feel operating models are too rigid and take away control of established power structures. How do you ease them into an open learning mindset?
Ah, that is the question, isn't it, Lily? Um, I think it takes time. It takes time. Um, I think it's about, again, about conversations. If you know that that is important, then again, we try different ways. We tried trials, we tried training. I think it's again applying a bit more that product mindset of, well, let's just test a bunch of stuff and learn from it. I think the challenge is when you have to do it, obviously, at the scale of the whole organization, then you just might need the actual buy-in from other departments. And I think that's when things get fairly tricky. Um, I would also say that giffgaff was always a culture where we were fairly open. We wanted to learn a lot. So maybe we had more fertile ground. We were not that traditional. We were quite traditional in sense of kind of having departments, I would say. But in my case, I think that everyone wanted to learn and wanted to be open. It is just much harder when you do it on something that people feel very close, or very, yeah, very defensive about it. So I don't know if I'm actually answering your question, Lily, but I think it's a difficult one. I think what all of this journey was really about, how every day you show up, you continue to show up, a challenge after challenge, and you try to make people more comfortable. I think it's the only thing I did for 5 years.
Super. Well, Carlotta, thank you so much for coming along and chatting with us this evening.